Rain slid down the cold pavement as Princess Diana knelt, her gloved hands trembling around a paper cup. The homeless man looked up, stunned, as she met his eyes without fear, without guards, without titles. A police siren wailed somewhere distant, breaking the silence. Diana inhaled sharply, as if making a decision no one expected. Her voice was barely a whisper, but it carried weight. Why would the most watched woman in the world stop here, tonight, and what promise did she just make that no one else heard? Watching this story unfold right now, tell me, where in the world are you listening from today? Rain slid down the windows of the black car like slow tears, blurring the golden lights of London. Princess Diana sat quietly in the back seat, her posture graceful, but her eyes far away. The charity gala was over. Applause still echoed in her ears. Smiles, handshakes, polite words about generosity. Yet her chest felt strangely heavy, as if something unfinished waited outside the glass. The car slowed at a red light. That was when she saw him. A man sat against a cold stone wall, half hidden by shadow. His coat was torn at the sleeve. His shoes were soaked through. A paper cup rested near his knee, empty except for rain. People passed him without slowing. One man laughed loudly into the night. Another woman pulled her coat tighter and turned her face away. Diana's breath caught. "Stop the car," she said softly. The driver glanced at her in the mirror. "Your Royal Highness, this isn't—" "Please," she repeated, barely above a whisper. The car stopped. Before anyone could protest, Diana opened the door. Cold air rushed in, sharp and alive. Rain kissed her hair and shoulders as she stepped onto the pavement alone. No guards, no cameras, no titles. Her heels clicked once, then slowed as she approached him. The man looked up, startled. His eyes widened, not with recognition at first, but with confusion, like someone who had forgotten what it felt like to be noticed. For a moment neither spoke. The city hummed around them. A bus hissed past. Somewhere a siren wailed and faded. "Good evening," Diana said gently. Her voice did not sound royal. It sounded human. He swallowed. "Evening, ma'am." She knelt down without thinking. Rain soaked into the hem of her dress. She didn't care. "Are you hungry?" she asked. He shook his head slowly. His hands trembled as he pulled them into his sleeves. "No," he said after a pause. "I'm tired." Diana nodded, waiting. Tired of being invisible. The words landed between them, heavy and honest. Diana felt them in her chest. She had been photographed her whole life, watched, followed, judged, and yet she understood invisibility in a different way. The loneliness of being seen but not known. "What's your name?" she asked. "Michael," he said. "Used to matter, once." "It still does," Diana replied instantly. Michael looked at her then, really looked. His eyes filled, just a little. He looked away quickly, embarrassed. They talked quietly as rain fell around them. He spoke of work he once had, a family he lost after years of bad turns and worse luck. Not excuses, just facts. Diana listened without interrupting. She didn't glance at her watch. She didn't rush him. When he finished, there was a long silence. Diana reached into her purse and placed some money in his cup. Then she did something unexpected. She took out a small card and wrote carefully, shielding it from the rain. She handed it to him. "My name is Diana," she said softly. "If you need help tomorrow, show this to the people at this address." Michael stared at the card. His hands shook harder now. "Why?" he asked, his voice cracking. "Why would you do this?" Diana smiled sadly. "Because someone once did it for me." She stood slowly. Rain traced her face like tears. She took one step away, then another. Something pulled at her. She turned back. Michael was still staring at the card, like it might disappear if he blinked. Diana pressed her hand to her chest, feeling her heart beat faster than it had all evening. As the car door closed behind her, and the city swallowed the moment, Diana already knew one thing with painful clarity. This night was not finished with her yet. Sleep never came. Princess Diana lay awake in the wide, silent bedroom of Kensington Palace, staring at the ceiling as dawn crept closer. The room was beautiful. High ceilings, soft lamps, carefully chosen flowers placed earlier that evening. Yet it felt hollow, like a stage after the audience had gone home. She closed her eyes and saw him again. Michael's face appeared in her mind without warning. The way his hands shook, the way he said invisible, not with anger, but with quiet acceptance. That word echoed now, louder than any cheering crowd she had faced hours earlier. Diana rose from the bed and walked barefoot across the cool floor. She removed her necklace slowly, then her earrings, placing them down with care. Each soft clink sounded too loud in the stillness. Outside, faint camera shutters clicked beyond the gates. Even here, she was never truly alone. Yet she had never felt more so. She moved to the window and parted the curtain just enough to see the dark garden below. Dew clung to the grass. The sky was beginning to change color. Morning was coming, whether she was ready or not. Her reflection stared back at her in the glass. Not the princess the world applauded, but a woman unsettled, restless, aching with unanswered feeling. Why him? She whispered to herself. She turned away and sat at the small writing desk in the corner. For a long moment, she did nothing. Then she picked up a pen. Her hand hesitated. Finally, she wrote one word on the paper. Michael. She underlined it. The name felt heavier than expected. A soft knock sounded at the door. Diana straightened quickly. Yes? An aide stepped in carefully. Your Royal Highness, breakfast will be ready shortly. And your schedule. Please, Diana said gently, holding up her hand. Not yet. The aide hesitated, then nodded and withdrew. The door closed again, restoring the silence. Diana leaned back in the chair, pressing her fingers to her temples. Her life was governed by schedules, by expectation, by rules written long before she ever stepped into them. Every movement planned, every appearance guarded. And yet last night, just for a moment, none of that had mattered. She stood suddenly, decision forming in her chest with a clarity that surprised even her. Diana moved quickly now. She opened her wardrobe, bypassing the tailored dresses and formal suits. Instead, she reached for something simple, a plain coat. Low shoes, no jewelry, no symbols. She tied her hair back herself, glancing at the mirror only once. You don't need permission to be kind, she murmured. The palace was waking as she moved through it, but she kept her head down, her steps quiet. No guards followed, no one stopped her. It felt dangerously easy, like slipping out of a dream before someone noticed. As she reached the door, she paused. Fear brushed against her resolve. Not fear of danger, but fear of disappointment. Fear that Michael would be gone. Fear that her presence had meant more to her than it ever could to him. She opened the door anyway. Cold morning air met her face. The city breathed around her, unaware of what she carried inside. As Diana stepped beyond the palace gates, unseen and unannounced, one thought stayed with her like a steady flame. If she did nothing, the world would go on unchanged. But if she returned to that street, everything might. Morning light washed over London like a fragile promise. Pale gold slipped between buildings, touching windows, buses, pavements, and finally, Princess Diana's face as she stepped onto the quiet street. She walked without entourage, without announcement. Her coat was simple, her steps were steady, but her heart was not. Each breath felt sharper than the last, filled with a nervous hope she could not name. The street looked smaller in daylight, cleaner, colder, too ordinary. Diana's eyes moved quickly to the stone wall where Michael had sat the night before. The cardboard, the paper cup, the thin blanket, gone. Her steps slowed. No, she whispered, barely audible. She stood there, frozen, scanning the pavement, as if he might suddenly appear if she looked hard enough. People passed her now. Office workers, delivery drivers, shop owners, unlocking doors. None of them noticed her distress. To them she was just another woman standing still. A tight ache formed in her chest. She approached a nearby cafe, its windows fogged with steam. A man was setting out chairs. Excuse me, Diana said politely. There was a man here last night. Older, brown coat. The man frowned, thinking, homeless fellow. Yes, he nodded slowly. They moved him on. Happens all the time. Moved him where? Diana asked, her voice tightening. The man shrugged. Shelter, maybe. Or nowhere. Depends who found him first. The words nowhere followed her as she stepped back onto the pavement. She walked further down the street, her eyes searching doorways, benches, corners, nothing. Each empty space felt louder than the last. She wondered if this was what he meant. How easy it was to disappear by morning. A small voice broke her thoughts. Are you looking for the man with the sad eyes? Diana turned. A little girl stood a few feet away, holding her mother's hand. She couldn't have been more than 7. Her coat was bright red, startling against the grey street. Yes, Diana said gently, crouching down. Did you see him? The girl nodded. He gave me his apple once. Diana's throat tightened. Do you know where he went? The child hesitated, then pointed. The van, the white one. The men said he didn't belong here. Diana felt something shift inside her, sharp and unmistakable. Thank you, she said softly. The girl smiled, then was pulled along by her mother, already distracted by the day. Diana straightened slowly. He didn't belong here. The phrase echoed cruelly, as if dignity had an address, as if worth depended on location. She followed the direction the child had pointed, her pace quickening. Her thoughts raced. What if she was too late? What if her promise meant nothing now? After several blocks, she saw a sign for a temporary shelter tucked between 2 buildings. It looked tired, forgotten. She stepped inside. The air smelled of disinfectant and old coffee. A woman behind the desk looked up, startled. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for someone," Diana said calmly. "His name is Michael." The woman's expression softened. "Michael? Yes, he was here briefly. Early morning." Diana held her breath. "Is he still here?" The woman shook her head. "No, he left." Disappointment washed over her. But before it could settle, the woman added quietly, "You should know something, though." Diana leaned forward. "He wasn't always like this," the woman said. "Michael served his country, decorated, came home broken. The system forgot him." Diana closed her eyes. The world shifted again. A homeless man was not just homeless. He was abandoned. And Princess Diana understood, with sudden clarity, that this was no longer about one night of kindness. It was about a promise that demanded more. As she stepped back into the morning light, her resolve hardened. Because now that she knew the truth, walking away was no longer possible. The truth hit Diana harder than any headline ever could. The shelter door closed behind Princess Diana, with a dull, final sound. Inside, the air felt heavy, thick with exhaustion. Old coffee, and stories no one asked to hear. The woman at the desk watched Diana carefully now. No longer just curious but aware that this visitor was different. Diana stood still for a moment, letting the sounds settle. Coughing. A chair scraping the floor. A man muttering to himself in the corner. These were not scenes meant for cameras, yet they felt more real than any ballroom she had ever entered. "Michael came through here early," the woman repeated quietly. "He didn't stay." "Why?" Diana asked. The woman sighed, leaning back. Pride, shame, and sometimes anger. Men like him don't like feeling managed. Diana nodded. She understood that more than most. A man in a dark suit approached from the hallway. His steps sharp, his expression tight. "You shouldn't be here," he said bluntly. Diana turned to face him. "Why not?" "This place isn't suitable," he replied. "And your presence complicates things." "People's lives are already complicated," Diana said calmly. "I'm only listening," the man scoffed. "Listening doesn't fix systems." "No," Diana replied. "Ignoring them breaks people." The room fell quiet. She walked further inside, her eyes taking everything in: the worn blankets, the tired faces, the quiet dignity clinging to survival. No one rushed toward her. No one begged. They simply watched, unsure whether hope was safe. An older man spoke suddenly. "They tell us to move along," he said, "like we're rubbish on the pavement." Diana's jaw tightened. "Who tells you that?" she asked. "Everyone," he answered. Later that morning, Diana sat across from two local officials in a small office nearby. Papers were stacked neatly. Coffee sat untouched. Their smiles were polite but strained. "We appreciate your concern," one of them said carefully, "but homelessness is complex." "So are people," Diana replied. "Yet you seem very comfortable simplifying them." Another official leaned forward. "With respect, Your Royal Highness, this isn't your battle." Diana's eyes hardened, not with anger but resolve. "Every human being is my concern," she said quietly. The first official sighed. "You're being idealistic." "No," Diana said. "I'm being present." They exchanged looks. One of them lowered his voice. "If you continue this, it will attract attention. And attention brings consequences." Diana stood. "Then let it," she said. As she left the building, her heart pounded. Not from fear, but from clarity. The problem was no longer finding Michael. It was facing the wall built to keep people like him unseen. Outside, the city moved on. Cars passed, people hurried. Somewhere, Michael was alone again. Diana paused on the pavement, rain beginning to fall once more. She realized something painful and undeniable. Kindness was not always welcomed. Sometimes it was resisted. Ignoring them breaks people. As Diana stepped away, one warning echoed in her mind. Some powerful people wanted her to stop digging. Just when Diana thought she was closer than ever, Michael pulled away. The afternoon sky darkened faster than expected, clouds gathering low as Princess Diana stepped out of the small building. Her coat felt heavier now, clinging to her shoulders like the truth she could no longer ignore. Somewhere nearby, Michael was still out there, tired, proud, and running out of places to hide. She found him just before evening. He sat beneath a bridge, the sound of traffic rumbling above like distant thunder. His back was turned, shoulders hunched, as if the world itself leaned down on him. For a moment, Diana watched from a distance, afraid that if she spoke, he might vanish again. "Michael," she said softly. He stiffened. Slowly he turned. Recognition flickered across his face, followed instantly by something darker. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "I was hoping you'd say that," Diana replied gently. "It means you still care." He let out a dry laugh. Care doesn't keep you warm. She stepped closer, careful not to crowd him. I can help you. There are doctors, a place to stay, people who will treat you with respect. Michael shook his head, eyes dropping to the ground. I don't need charity. This isn't charity, Diana said. It's support. To you, he snapped. To me it's being managed. Watched. Fixed. Diana knelt again, ignoring the damp concrete. Michael, please. He looked at her then, really looked. His eyes were wet, angry, exhausted. You go back to palaces, he said. I go back to nothing. Don't pretend this is the same. The words cut deeper than she expected. Not because they were cruel, but because they were true. I know it's not the same, Diana whispered. That's why I'm here. He stood abruptly, pacing a few steps away. People like you don't understand what it feels like to lose everything. Diana rose slowly. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled. You're wrong, she said. I've lost more than you think. He stopped. Silence stretched between them, filled only by the roar of cars overhead. She took a breath. I won't force you, she said, but I won't disappear either. Michael turned back to her, conflict tearing across his face. You should, he said quietly, before I disappoint you. Diana felt her throat tighten. I'm not afraid of disappointment, she replied. I'm afraid of leaving people where I found them. He shook his head again, backing away. Go home, Diana. Hearing her name from his lips made it worse. She stood there as he retreated into shadow, every instinct telling her to follow, yet knowing she couldn't cross this line for him. Help could be offered. Dignity had to be chosen. As the light faded, Diana remained under the bridge long after Michael was gone. She had reached out with everything she had, and still, it hadn't been enough. I'm afraid of leaving people where I found them. As Diana turned away, one thought haunted her relentlessly. What if helping him meant letting him fall first? Michael's refusal did not end the story. It cracked something open in both of them. Night returned quietly, like it had unfinished business. Princess Diana sat alone in the back of the car. But this time she did not ask to be driven home. Instead, she stared out at the passing streets, her reflection flickering in the glass, fragmented, uncertain, human. Stop here, she said suddenly. The driver hesitated. Your Royal Highness, it's late. Please, she said again. That word carried more weight than command ever could. She stepped out near the river, the air colder now, sharper. She walked slowly, scanning the shadows, her heart beating harder with every step. She did not know why she was here, only that leaving Michael the way she had felt wrong. She found him sitting on the stone steps near the water, staring at the dark surface as if it held answers. Diana approached quietly and sat beside him without asking. For a long moment, neither spoke. You shouldn't have come back, Michael said finally. I know, Diana replied, but I did. He let out a tired breath. People don't come back. She turned slightly toward him. I do. The river moved beside them, indifferent, endless. You don't understand what it costs, he said. Every time someone offers help, it reminds me of everything I failed to be. Diana's hands rested loosely in her lap. And every time you refuse it, she said gently, you punish yourself more than anyone else ever could. Michael laughed bitterly. Easy words from someone who's never been discarded. Diana looked down, then back up at him. Her voice lowered. Michael, there are rooms full of people who cheer my name, and still I have felt completely alone. He glanced at her, surprised. I've been surrounded, she continued, and yet unseen. Loved by millions, understood by almost no one. The wind lifted her hair. She did not fix it. Silence stretched again, but this time it felt different. Less guarded. I was a soldier, Michael said suddenly. I was strong. People depended on me. Diana nodded. They still do. No, he whispered. Not like that. She leaned closer, not invading his space, just enough to be heard. Strength doesn't disappear because life breaks you, she said. It changes shape. His shoulders shook slightly. He pressed his hands together, fighting tears he refused to let fall. What if I can't be who I was? He asked. Diana answered without hesitation. Then be who you are now. That's enough. Michael turned fully toward her. His eyes were wet, raw, honest. Why do you care this much? He asked. Diana swallowed. The truth rose before she could stop it. Because I know what it feels like when the world decides you're easier to admire than to help. Something inside him finally gave way. He nodded once, slowly. If I accept, I don't want pity. You won't get it, Diana said. You'll get choice. He exhaled, long and shaky. Then he asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. Will you still be here tomorrow? Diana met his eyes, unwavering. Yes, she said. Strength doesn't disappear because life breaks you. It changes shape. As Michael finally stood beside her, one impossible question lingered between them. What would the world do when it saw this promise kept? Diana answered before fear could stop her, and the balance between them quietly shifted. Morning arrived gently, as if London itself was cautious not to disturb what had begun the night before. Princess Diana returned, just as she had promised. No photographers, no advisors, only resolve carried in the steady rhythm of her steps. Michael was waiting. He stood near the same river, hands buried deep in his coat pockets. When he saw her, something unfamiliar crossed his face. Not disbelief this time, but relief he hadn't prepared himself to feel. "You came," he said. "I said I would," Diana replied simply. They walked together for a while, side by side, not touching. The city woke around them. Shops opened, voices rose. Life continued, unaware that something fragile and important was unfolding on an ordinary pavement. "There's a place," Diana said carefully. "Small, quiet, no cameras, medical help if you want it. No one will force anything." Michael stopped walking. "And if I walk away again?" he asked. Diana turned to him. "Then I'll still know you mattered." The words settled deep. He looked at the ground, then back at her. "You don't talk like people who usually offer help." She gave a faint smile. "That's because I'm not offering help. I'm offering respect." They arrived at a modest building tucked between taller ones, easy to miss. Michael hesitated at the door, his hand hovering near the handle. "This feels like the moment where people disappear," he said quietly. Diana stepped closer, not ahead of him, not behind, beside him. "Then don't disappear," she said. "Stay visible. On your terms." He took a breath and stepped inside. Later, as arrangements were quietly set in motion, Diana stood back, watching him speak with a nurse. His posture was still guarded, but his eyes were clearer, less defensive, like someone who had been holding his breath for years and had finally let some of it go. A man in a suit appeared at the end of the corridor, his expression tense. He leaned toward Diana. "This is becoming risky," he murmured. "People are starting to notice patterns. Your schedule, your absences." Diana did not look away from Michael. "Let them notice," she said. "Your reputation." "My reputation is not more important than someone's life," she interrupted calmly. The man fell silent. Across the room, Michael glanced over, sensing the shift. Diana met his eyes and nodded slightly. "I'm still here." For the first time he smiled. It was small, fragile, but real. "I don't know how to thank you," he said later, his voice rough. "You don't have to," Diana replied. "Just live." Outside, unaware eyes lingered longer than they should have. A passerby slowed. Someone raised a camera briefly before lowering it again. Unseen lines were being crossed. As Diana prepared to leave, Michael spoke one last time. "People won't understand why you did this," he said. Diana paused at the door. "They don't have to," she answered. She stepped out into the light, unaware that somewhere nearby, a single image had already been captured. An image never meant for the world. "I'm not offering help. I'm offering respect." As Diana disappeared down the street, a quiet click echoed behind her, and the story was no longer only theirs. It took just one photograph to turn a quiet promise into a public storm. The image appeared before dawn, blurry at first, cropped, slightly tilted, but unmistakable. Princess Diana, head bowed, standing beside a homeless man outside a modest building. By the time the sun rose, the photograph had already begun its journey, from one editor's desk to another, from whispered curiosity to sharpened interest. It did not need explanation. The world filled in the gaps on its own. Inside the palace, tension thickened the air. Diana sat at a small breakfast table, untouched tea cooling beside her, as an aide entered with a folded newspaper. He hesitated, then placed it gently in front of her. She unfolded it slowly. There it was. No headline yet, just the image, powerful enough without words. Diana did not flinch. "They're asking questions," the aide said carefully. "Where you were, who he is." She looked up. And, some are unhappy." Diana nodded once. She had expected this. Across the city, Michael sat on the edge of a narrow bed, the same newspaper trembling in his hands. His face had drained of color. "That's me," he whispered. A nurse stepped closer. "Michael, it's okay." "No," he said, standing abruptly. "It's not." He stared at the photograph again. Diana's kindness, frozen in ink. Exposed. "They'll tear her apart," he said. "Because of me." Back at the palace, advisors gathered. Voices overlapped. Concerns sharpened. "This paints the wrong picture," one said. "It undermines protocol," another added. Diana listened quietly. "You need to distance yourself," a senior voice insisted. Immediately, she raised her hand gently. The room fell silent. "I will not deny the truth," Diana said, "and I will not deny him." Silence followed, heavy, shocked. Meanwhile, Michael paced the room, panic tightening his chest. Every instinct screamed the same command: run. He packed what little he had into a small bag. His hands moved quickly, desperately. "She helped me," he muttered, "and now I've hurt her." Outside, rain began to fall again, harder this time. Diana stood by a window, watching it streak down the glass. She felt it now. The weight of visibility. The danger of being seen doing good in a world that preferred distance. "Your Royal Highness," an aide said softly. "He's gone." Diana turned sharply. Gone. He left the facility. Early this morning. Her heart sank. She knew instantly why. "No," she whispered. "I did this." The room felt suddenly too small, too controlled. She reached for her coat. "Where are you going?" someone asked. "To find him," Diana said firmly. Outside, Michael moved through the streets like a shadow. The newspaper folded tightly under his arm. Every passerby felt like an accusation. Every glance felt imagined but unbearable. He ducked into an alley, pressing his back against the wall. "This was a mistake," he whispered to the rain. "I should have stayed invisible." Back in the car, Diana leaned forward, urgency burning through her calm. "Drive," she said, "please." Two lives were unraveling at once, one under too much light, the other retreating into darkness. And somewhere between them, kindness was being tested in public. "I will not deny the truth, and I will not deny him." As Diana searched the rain-soaked streets, one fear consumed her. What if being seen had finally driven him away for good? Guilt drove Diana back into the storm, alone, unguarded, and unwilling to lose him again. Rain lashed against the windshield as the car slowed near the river. Princess Diana leaned forward, scanning every shadow, every doorway, every familiar corner. The city blurred past, but her focus narrowed to one thing only. "Michael, stop here," she said sharply. Before anyone could object, she was out of the car, rain soaking her coat instantly. She walked fast now, calling his name without caring who heard. "Michael!" People turned, some recognized her. Whispers followed. A man pulled out a camera, another froze in disbelief. Diana didn't stop. She found him near the underpass where they had spoken days before. He stood rigid, newspaper clenched in his fist like evidence of a crime. "Don't come closer," Michael said, his voice breaking. Diana halted, but did not step back. "I'm sorry," she said immediately. "I should have protected you better." He laughed bitterly. "Protected me? Look at me. I was safe when no one cared." "That wasn't safety," Diana replied. "That was neglect." A small crowd gathered, drawn by the impossible sight. Rain fell harder, bouncing off the concrete, soaking everyone equally. "They'll never leave you alone now," Michael said. "Because of me." Diana shook her head. "No, because of them." Someone in the crowd shouted, "Why are you doing this?" Diana turned slowly, her face calm, her eyes burning with resolve. "Because he matters," she said. The words cut through the rain like silence after thunder. Michael's hands shook. "You don't owe me this." "I don't owe you anything," Diana replied. "I choose this." A camera clicked. Then another. Diana stepped closer now, lowering her voice so only he could hear. "You don't get to disappear to protect me," she said. "That choice isn't yours alone." Tears spilled down Michael's face, mixing with rain. "I didn't want to be a burden." "You were never a burden," Diana said firmly. "You were ignored." The crowd had gone quiet. Even the cameras seemed to hesitate. She straightened and spoke again. Louder this time, her voice steady and unmistakable. "If kindness makes you uncomfortable," Diana said, "then perhaps the problem isn't kindness." A hush fell, her words carried, captured, recorded, impossible to soften. Michael stared at her, stunned. "They're going to hear this everywhere," he whispered. Diana met his gaze. "Then let them." Sirens sounded in the distance, not urgent but present. The city had noticed. Diana placed a hand gently on his arm. "Come back," she said. "Not for me, for yourself." He hesitated, then nodded once. Together, they turned toward the waiting car. Behind them, the crowd buzzed. Phones were raised. Headlines were already being imagined. But for one moment, just one, the noise faded. What remained was a promise kept in the open. If kindness makes you uncomfortable, perhaps the problem isn't kindness. As the footage spread across the world, one question echoed everywhere. Had Diana just changed the conversation forever? By morning, the storm was no longer in the streets. It was everywhere. The footage played on screens across the world before breakfast had even cooled. Princess Diana, standing in the rain, a homeless man beside her. Her voice steady, calm, unflinching. Newsrooms buzzed, radios repeated her words. Television panels paused mid-argument, unsure how to frame what had just happened. Inside Kensington Palace, the mood was tense but quiet. Diana sat alone in a small sitting room, hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea she hadn't tasted. Outside the window, reporters gathered like restless birds. An aide entered slowly. Public responses, overwhelming. Diana looked up. In what way? Supportive, he said, more than anyone expected. Letters began arriving before noon. Handwritten notes, messages from nurses, veterans, mothers, teachers, people who recognized themselves in Michael's story and in Diana's refusal to look away. In a modest medical facility across the city, Michael sat by a window, watching rain drip from the ledge outside. A doctor spoke gently nearby, explaining next steps. Housing, care, time. Michael nodded, but his attention drifted. Do you think she's in trouble? He asked quietly. The nurse smiled softly. I think she's changing things. Back at the palace, advisors gathered again, this time with a different tone. Charities are calling, one said. Veteran organizations, housing groups. Another added, they want to work with you. Diana listened, then spoke calmly. Then listen to them. This isn't about me. One advisor hesitated. The man, Michael. The public wants to know what happened to him. Diana's gaze steadied. They don't need details. They need to know he's safe. That afternoon, Diana made a brief statement. No stage, no dramatic framing. Kindness should never require courage, she said simply. But sometimes, it does. The words spread faster than the photograph ever had. Michael watched the clip later that evening. He sat very still as Diana's face filled the screen. Not triumphant, not proud. Just honest. She didn't turn it into a story, he murmured. She turned it into a mirror. Days passed. Michael moved into a small room of his own. Clean sheets, a door that locked, a window that opened. The first night, he slept with the light on, just to be sure it was real. Diana did not visit him again, not because she didn't care, but because she understood something important. Support was not ownership. Help did not mean staying forever. Instead, she sent a note. Short, handwritten. I told you I'd be here. I am. Well, Michael folded it carefully and placed it beside his bed. For the first time in years, he cried. Not from shame, but from relief. The world slowly moved on to new headlines, but something had shifted beneath the noise. Conversations had started. Policies were questioned. People noticed those they once stepped around. And Diana watched quietly from a distance, knowing that the loudest changes often begin with the softest voices. She didn't turn it into a story. She turned it into a mirror. Just when the world thought it understood the ending, one final request arrived. Michael wanted to see her one last time. Do you believe moments like this truly change the world, or only reveal what we chose not to see before? Their final meeting did not begin with words. It began with silence that said everything. The room was small and filled with afternoon light. A single window stood open, letting in the soft sounds of the city. Distant traffic, a passing laugh, life moving forward. Michael sat near the bed, hands resting on his knees, waiting. When Princess Diana entered, there were no cameras, no aides, no urgency, just her. He stood up quickly, unsure of himself. I didn't know if you'd come. Diana smiled gently. You asked. For a moment, neither spoke. The air felt fragile, like a memory forming in real time. Michael gestured to the chair. Please. She sat, smoothing her coat, eyes already taking in the changes. He looked healthier, cleaner, straighter, not fixed, but grounded. They tell me I'll be moving soon, Michael said. A small flat, mine. Diana nodded. I'm glad. He hesitated, then laughed softly. I used to think having a door that locks was a small thing. It isn't, Diana replied. It's safety. He looked down, fingers tightening. I've been thinking about that night. The first one. You didn't have to stop. I wanted to, she said simply. That's what scares me, he admitted. People usually want something back. Diana shook her head. Kindness doesn't work like that. Michael swallowed hard. You changed everything. She leaned forward slightly. No, she said. You did. You let yourself be seen. Tears filled his eyes. He didn't wipe them away this time. I was ashamed, he said, of what I'd become. Diana's voice softened. You were surviving. There is no shame in that. He took a breath, steadying himself. I don't want to disappear again. Not like before. You won't, Diana said, because now you know you exist. Outside, a bus passed. Life continued, unaware of how much had already changed. Michael reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I wrote something, he said, in case I didn't say it right. He handed it to her with shaking hands. Diana unfolded it slowly, her eyes moving across the page. Her expression changed. Not dramatic, but deeply moved. Thank you, she whispered, For what? He asked. For reminding me, she said, why being human matters more than being protected. They stood together near the window. I won't see you again, Michael said quietly. Not a question, an understanding. Diana met his gaze. That means this worked. He nodded, then surprised her by opening his arms slightly. Hesitant, unsure. She stepped forward and embraced him. Brief, respectful, real. When she pulled away, she smiled one last time. Live well, she said. I will, he promised. As Diana walked toward the door, Michael spoke again, his voice steady now. You saved my life. She paused, her hand resting on the handle. No, Diana said softly, without turning around. You chose it. She left the room, closing the door gently behind her. Michael stood alone, but not lonely. And somewhere deep within him, something permanent had taken root. You were surviving. There is no shame in that. Years later, when Diana least expected it, a letter would arrive, and its words would undo her completely. Time had passed, wounds had softened, and then one envelope changed everything. The afternoon was quiet, the kind Princess Diana treasured most. Sunlight spilled gently across her desk, warming the scattered papers she had yet to read. The world had not slowed, but she had learned how to breathe within it. An aide entered softly and placed a small stack of letters beside her. Personal correspondence, he said. No press. Diana smiled faintly. Thank you. She worked through them slowly. Charity updates, handwritten notes, small stories of lives she had touched but never fully known. Then she noticed one envelope that did not belong with the rest. Plain, cream-colored, her name written carefully, deliberately. Her fingers paused. Something about it felt familiar. She opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded twice. The handwriting was steadier than she remembered, but unmistakable. Diana sat back in her chair as she read. I don't know if you remember me, the letter began, but I remember you every day. Her breath caught. The words carried her back instantly, to rain-soaked streets, to a paper cup, to a man who had once believed he was invisible. Michael, she read on. You told me strength changes shape. You were right. I have a door now, a job, a reason to wake up. Diana pressed a hand to her mouth. Outside the window, a breeze moved the curtains gently. Inside, time folded in on itself. I volunteer twice a week now. The letter continued. I sit with men who remind me of who I used to be. I don't fix them. I just listen like you did. A tear slipped down Diana's cheek. She did not wipe it away. There's one thing I never told you, Michael wrote. The morning you came back, I had already decided not to live much longer. Diana's heart stuttered. You didn't save me with money, the letter said. You saved me by seeing me. She closed her eyes, emotion flooding her chest. Grief for what had almost been lost, gratitude for what had been quietly changed. At the bottom of the page, one final line waited. I wanted you to know your kindness is still alive, every time I pass it on. Diana folded the letter carefully, as if it was something fragile and sacred. She held it against her heart, breathing slowly, deeply. For a long time she did not move. When she finally stood, she walked to the window and looked out at the world, busy, flawed, waiting. She thought of all the moments no one ever saw, all the quiet decisions that never made headlines, all the lives altered not by grand speeches, but by simple presence. Diana smiled through tears, not because she had been remembered, but because kindness had outlived the moment. You saved me by seeing me. As Diana folded the letter away, she realized something profound. The story she thought had ended was still quietly growing. Diana realized then that kindness never ends. It only learns how to travel. The letter stayed with her long after the afternoon light had shifted. Princess Diana did not place it back among the others. Instead, she kept it close, folded neatly, as if it were a quiet companion rather than a memory. That evening, she walked alone through the palace gardens. The air was cool, carrying the scent of damp earth and roses just beginning to fade. Gravel crunched beneath her shoes with each slow step. She moved without hurry, her thoughts turning inward. She thought of Michael, not as he had been, hunched beneath a bridge, but as he was now, standing, helping, listening. She stopped near a stone bench and sat, hands resting in her lap. For once, the weight she carried did not feel heavy. It felt meaningful. So many times the world had called her extraordinary, but she had never believed that word belonged to her. She had only believed in moments, in choices made quietly without witnesses. An aide approached from a distance, careful not to intrude. Your Royal Highness, he said gently, you're expected inside soon. Diana nodded, but did not rise immediately. Tell them I'll be a moment, she said. When the aide left, she leaned back and closed her eyes. She imagined Michael sitting with another man, now. Someone younger, perhaps. Someone angry. Someone convinced the world had no place for him. She imagined Michael saying nothing clever, nothing rehearsed, just staying, just listening. Diana smiled. That was how change truly happened. Not in speeches, but in patience. Later that night, Diana stood before a mirror, removing her earrings slowly. She studied her reflection, searching for the girl she had once been, and the woman she had become. Both were still there, still learning. "I hope you're proud," she whispered, not to herself, but to the unseen ripple that kindness had become. The next morning, she attended another engagement. Cameras flashed, crowds cheered, flowers were handed to her with trembling hands. She smiled, gracious and warm, but something inside her had shifted. She noticed a man standing slightly apart from the crowd. His clothes were worn, his posture uncertain. Others looked past him. Diana's eyes lingered. Their gazes met for just a second. She did not break protocol this time. She did not step forward, but she held his gaze long enough to let him know. "You are seen." The man straightened. That was enough. As the day moved on, Diana carried the letter's truth with her. Not as a burden, but as a reminder. Kindness was not a single act. It was a chain, passed hand to hand, heart to heart, and she was only one link. As evening settled, Diana returned to her room and placed the letter carefully into a drawer. Not hidden, not displayed, exactly where it belonged, close, because some stories were not meant to be told loudly. They were meant to be lived. Kindness is not a single act, it is a chain. As Diana stepped back into the world once more, she understood the truth. The smallest moments are often the ones that last forever. History does not remember noise. It remembers moments that refuse to disappear. Years passed, softly but relentlessly. Headlines changed, faces faded, crises rose and fell like tides. Yet some moments remained untouched by time, preserved not in archives but in people. Princess Diana understood this better than most. She sat in the back of a car once again. Older now, wiser in the way only lived experience could shape. Outside the window, London moved with familiar urgency. Buses groaned, pedestrians hurried. The city looked the same, but she knew it was not, because she was not. An aide spoke quietly beside her. Another engagement added tomorrow. Housing initiative. Veterans, Diana nodded. Good. There was no performance in her response. No calculation, just alignment. At the event later that day, she moved through the crowd with practiced grace. People reached out, not just to touch her hand, but to tell her things. Stories, confessions, gratitude. "You won't remember me," a woman said quickly, holding Diana's hand too tightly. "But you helped my brother, years ago." Diana squeezed her hand back. "Then I remember enough." Across the room, a young volunteer listened, eyes wide. He leaned toward another and whispered, "She's exactly like they say." Diana overheard and smiled faintly. "No," she thought. "I'm exactly like everyone else when they choose to look." Later, as the event wound down, Diana paused near a wall of photographs. Faces stared back at her. Men, women, children, some smiling, some tired, all real. One image caught her attention. A group of volunteers sitting on a curb, listening to a man speak. No banner, no spotlight. She knew that posture. She knew that stillness. It reminded her of rain, of concrete, of a man who once believed the world had finished with him. Diana stepped back, her throat tightening unexpectedly. "You all right?" someone asked. "Yes," she replied softly, just remembering. That evening, alone again, Diana removed her coat and sat by the window. The city lights shimmered below like distant stars. She thought about how stories were told, how people searched for beginnings and endings, heroes and conclusions, but life did not work that way. Some stories did not end. They echoed. Michael's story was no longer his alone. It had been carried forward into shelters, into conversations, into hands that chose to stay instead of turn away. And Diana's role in it? She did not claim it. She never needed to, because history would not record what she felt that night in the rain. It would not capture the tremble in her voice, or the moment she knelt on cold pavement. But people would, in their own quiet ways. Diana closed her eyes, letting the hum of the city fill the silence. For once, she felt at peace with what would be remembered, and what would never need to be. Some truths did not need witnesses. They only needed to survive. History does not remember noise. It remembers moments. And still one final image lingered. A rain-soaked street where everything had begun. Years later, the rain returned to the same street, and so did the memory. The pavement looked smaller than she remembered. Princess Diana stood quietly at the edge of the street, the city moving around her without pause. Cars passed, footsteps echoed. Umbrellas bloomed and folded like dark flowers in the rain. No one noticed her standing there, Not really. And that felt right. The stone wall was still there, weathered, unremarkable. If someone didn't know what had happened here, it would mean nothing at all. Just another place people hurried past. Diana stepped closer. She remembered the cold of the ground when she had knelt, the sound of rain in a paper cup, the way a man's voice had cracked when he said he was invisible. She closed her eyes. For a moment she could almost hear him again, not in pain, but steady, alive. A young man stood nearby, sheltering under an awning. His clothes were worn, his face tired. People passed him the same way they once passed Michael. Diana noticed. She always did. She didn't approach him. She didn't stop the world. She simply met his eyes and smiled. Softly, sincerely. The young man hesitated. Then he nodded back. It was a small exchange, invisible to everyone else. But Diana knew better. That was how it started. Always like that. Later, as she returned to the car, the rain eased. Light broke through the clouds, turning the wet pavement into mirrors. The city looked almost gentle. An aide opened the door. "Are you ready?" Diana paused, taking one last look at the street. "Yes," she said quietly. As the car pulled away, she rested her head back and exhaled slowly. She thought of Michael, of the letter, of the unseen hands now reaching out to others because someone once reached out to him. She thought of how the world cried not because of what she gave, but because of what it recognized in itself: compassion. The car disappeared into traffic, leaving the street exactly as it was: ordinary, anonymous. And yet, somewhere a man listened instead of turning away. Somewhere another stood a little straighter. Somewhere kindness passed forward without a name attached to it. That was the legacy Diana never needed to claim. Because the most powerful things she ever did were the ones that taught others how to do the same. Not loudly, not perfectly, but humanly. The rain washed the street clean, and the world quietly kept going, changed forever by a moment almost no one saw. The most powerful things she ever did were the ones that taught others how to care. If this story moved you even a little, carry it forward by seeing someone today who feels invisible, because sometimes that is how the world begins again.